Radio came on everywhere.
Everywhere.
Can you hear me now? Everywhere. Everywhere.
Yes, right from your Android or iPhone. Download the Radio Cayman app now on your Android or iOS phone.
The Radio Cayman app
is where you can listen to Radio Cayman everywhere you go.
Everywhere we go, we go. Everywhere we go, we go.
Find it in the Google Store, the Apple Store, or use the link at www.radiocayman.gov.ky.
Yes, now you can listen to Radio Cayman everywhere.
Oh, I think they're doing a great job. A lot of them are.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you?
Not too bad, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today. If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. You know, the day they say is better because you're in great company. It's even great when you appreciate that you're surrounded by wonderful people who are positive and nurturing and who see that the great benefits that lie ahead, who will not want to participate and partake, but who want to share. So we invite you to be a part of our discussion. The good friends from the Family Resource Center, as we talk about women in STEM in particular, it's not just about celebrating women, it's about celebrating our society. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And thanks to Miss Charmaine. You know, it's spelled Miller. But if you're a good West Bayer, you say Miller. Miss Charmaine, good afternoon, ma'am. How are you?
Good afternoon, Sterling. I'm good. Thank you for having me, as usual, for having our agency, and we're super excited to be here today to talk about women in STEM.
Indeed, and I'm honored that we're going to have a number of discussions we had yesterday. We'll have one following this. But I think increasingly we're starting to appreciate that if we want true equality, if we want people to understand that a person can be anything given opportunity, doesn't matter, you know, where they're from, whether they're male, female, or even a West Bayer, you know, even good things can come from the West. And that is important, you know, as we celebrate this month.
Yeah. This month's theme, International Women's Day theme, is #Break the Bias. And so we were really intentional in making sure that we were covering different themes, the different sub-themes overall, just to make sure that we're carrying through the message in a rounded way. And so the idea of bringing forward prominent women in Cayman right now that are, you know, breaking the bias, right? Whether you're young, you're starting out in the field, or you're very much well established, we thought it would be just a great opportunity to have a roundtable discussion with some women in STEM locally.
Indeed. And I'm glad that you assembled, you know, such a wonderful team for us to not only be inspired and encouraged, but to recognize that just within our shows, sometimes just down the street, sometimes it's the children's classmates or co-workers, children. These are people we know, relate to, and can be proud of.
Absolutely.
Through you, Ms. Shami, should we go around the table and ask each to introduce herself?
Absolutely.
Would that be fine? Do you want to start kind of like the accounting method, last in, first out, or first in, first out? Let's start
Well,
with
if we start last name, I think she's the first one.
No,
she just got here, but she's a pro.
She's a pro?
She's
only,
a pro.
only if you're comfortable. No, I would say Miss China. Okay, you go first. Why not? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon as well. So I'm Nami Abraham. I'm an electrical engineer with CUC, and sorry for being late. So I started as a production and controls engineer straight out of uni, and then moved on to T&D, which is transmission and distribution with CUC. Now got moved up to electrical engineer. So that's my short career progression.
And you work with?
Oh, CUC.
She's only said it 3 times.
Well, Namitha is very humble because Namitha has worked with us in the past with Honoring Women Month. I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago when we discovered her. Since then, we haven't been able to, let her go when it comes to talking about STEM-related issues. And she was the first female engineer at CUC.
But
Not
we do
anymore,
have
though.
3 now, which is a great.
Awesome.
Great,
I guess your word discover is like Christopher Columbus, and he discovered
the first.
She was always there. but thank you for highlighting her. And perhaps both the China and Lauren, you take examples from others who go before you, and it's not that you sort of take up the mantle or that you have a big load to shoulder. Through your example, you'll encourage not just hopefully more young ladies, but more young people in general to see, hey, I guess pound sign, break the bias. No, sounds good. Hashtag break the bias. Pound sign. Well, we want to talk about that because I want us as parents and adults and educators specifically to appreciate the importance of encouraging every single child in that precocious little student in the back who's asking questions constantly could grow up one day to be a talk show host. Just saying. Well, Miss Lauren, good afternoon and welcome. Would you equally share with us just a little bit about yourself as you introduce, if you wish?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. My name is Loren Dombowski, and I'm the Senior Environmental Assessment Officer at the Department of Environment. I work in the Environmental Management Unit, and in our unit we provide advice to other government bodies and anyone who wants advice about how their projects and proposals might affect the environment and how they can improve those projects to make them better for the environment.
Okay. And Ms. China, welcome, and thank you too for coming along. I mean, I think back to your colleague some years ago as a graduate engineer, and I see her now and again, and here you are, as a growing member of the Water Authority team. But welcome.
Yes, my name is China Ratumban. I work at Water Authority. I'm a laboratory technologist. I work in the Water Resources and Quality Control Department, and I help monitor the water and make sure you have clean water.
And what's interesting is that, Ms. Charmaine, I look around increasingly in society, and Ms. China might not remember, but I remember when she first got accepted, and she got a scholarship, and one of the famous supermarkets, I see her dad and his 2 fathers, very excited, but you can see the trepidation. Oh, my little girl is going.
Oh, yes.
And you remember that day?
I remember.
And it's so beautiful because here is, a parent to parent, father to father, being so excited about their child's next venture, and now to come back, and to be an instrumental part. I think now from that perspective, did you see, as we get through some of the questions first, hey, I'm the first woman blazing trails, or you just say, hey, you know what, I'm just another employee who, be careful, board of director, chairman, or minister for the environment.
I wish it was that easy. That isn't easy for any male or female, I would say. Well, I started my career back in Dubai. It's actually a lot better here because I'm not the first female employee. I was the first female engineer. In my first job, I was the first female employee. Wow. We didn't even have receptionists, cleaner. They were all male staff. So that was a whole different game. It was rough then. Joining CUC was a piece of cake because you even if it's a smaller number, you still have a very supporting group. But yes, the first job when I first did join, I did have reservations about how my career was going to go.
Wow.
It was not the easiest story to go through, but I still think the first year in my first job did teach me that if I can get through this, then I think I'll survive in this market. It's also something I remember my mom always reminding me that if you have to work, that's a different story. But when you want to work in something, then you shouldn't have to compromise anything other than your ego.
That's great.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
And that is something I always. She didn't give too many advice. So that one I took to heart. So every time I had to deal with something, I always saw myself worst case, I get fired tomorrow, I'll find another job. So that attitude, I think, helped me get through a lot of issues.
Yeah. We know fathers have wisdom, I hope so. My father was, and I want to be. But our mothers, they're incredibly wise. And that was great advice.
Absolutely.
Check your ego at the door. You don't want to think about. And the mindset of having and wanting. Can I then ask, because as we go into this break, too many times in Cayman specifically, we don't appreciate that we're highly advanced relative to certain things, as backwards as we may be in other things, or we think we are. And we're not talking a century or two ago. We're talking literally maybe yesterday, last year, that even in advanced economies, even in industrialized nations, even in Europe sometimes, you'll still see that thing that serves as, Mishami, perhaps the word would be sort of discredits or denies or even discriminates
or
against
inequalities.
And yet here we are, being advanced. So maybe when we come back from the break, could we ask about what was the impetus? What made you want to get into this field? Did you know that's what you wanted to do? Or, could we talk about some of that when we come back from the break?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm excited about this, man, and I think more of us going to see how important it is that through togetherness we can accomplish great things. So please, stay tuned for Talk Today.
Something big is coming to Radio Cayman.
Have you heard? Well, what is it?
For 3 days only, April 5th to 7th.
I know what it is, but I can't tell you. Ma, you don't know? How you know?
You don't want to miss this.
Well, hurry up and tell us now.
Radio Cayman is offering something big for all our advertisers. Contact rcsales@gov.ky or get in touch with your account executive to learn more.
So you're really not going to tell us?
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
You see how hard it's raining?
Yeah, and I don't have time to fight traffic and get my lunch from Subway. I have so much work to do.
Why don't you order Subway by using the Let's Eat or Bento app? Save time, stay dry, and get your sandwich fast.
I never thought of that. Great idea. I'm going to order now.
Order me a veggie pizza while you're at it.
And a cookie platter for the office.
Too busy at work or home? Is the rainy weather stopping you from dining out? Order your favorite Subway sandwich, wrap, or pizza through the Let's Eat or Bento app with fast and reliable delivery. Subway, eat fresh.
The best foundation you can wear is glowing, healthy skin. The offices of dermatologist Dr. Wayne Porter specialize in enhancing your skin's well-being. Whether you're seeking advanced skincare, including any skin cancers, Botox, filler, cosmetic skin enhancements, or simply looking to reduce wrinkles, Dr. Porter offers a full-service dermatology and dermatological surgery practice. For more information, email drportercayman@gmail.com or call 946-9020. That is 946-9020.
You know what I love to do with my family? Go fishing. I can put the bait on and cast and reel the line all by myself. My mommy and daddy say when they were little, there were plenty more fish to catch, but now there are lots more people fishing, so it's harder to find them. That's why we have marine parks now. They set some areas aside so the fish there can have babies and grow bigger. Then they swim out to other areas where I can catch them. Having the marine parks means there will still be fish there when I'm grown up and fishing with a family of my own.
For more info, download the Cayman DOE app or visit doe.ky.
But I do have some questions.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thank you very much. And if I sound excited, it isn't because of the 15 cups of coffee or the wonderful company they had.
That's
because
what you do.
what you thought it was just chocolate?
I don't know what it was.
It's coffee-laced chocolate.
Okay.
Or chocolate-laced coffee. No, it is genuinely because I'm so inspired by the wonderful people in this country, and to be able to sit there each day and want to learn to do this job. It's not that I have to, other than have to pay the bills and I have to, but I want to. And I think today's discussion, the one subsequent as well, would be about how do we make us better by embracing who we are and learning to love, nurture, support. So Ms. Charmaine Milo at the Family Resource Center has assembled another wonderful team of individuals. It's now together with Lauren and Ms. China. Women in STEM.
Yes.
There was a time when you would have sadly not even considered as it's now talked about being the first female employee
right
in an organization.
That's not fascinating.
Wow.
Yeah.
In the 21st century.
Right. And so today it was really important for us to tackle that area of STEM, and we've done so in a very creative way. This is a part of it, the roundtable discussion. On Saturday, we had an opportunity to launch our first girls STEM camp, and it was an absolute success. We had 31 young girls between the ages of 8 to 13, and that's just our way of starting to elicit some interest and creating an opportunity where young girls who are interested in the sciences, technology, robotics, and whatnot, they're able to find a space, feel comfortable in that space, and be with other peers that are equally as interested to foster some of that passion. So that was the vision, and we've done a lot of different things this month to bring together that theme. So I'm really interested to hear about about these young women that we have today. And I guess we can get started by asking our first question.
Yes, ma'am.
What made, and anyone can answer this, what made you all decide to pursue the STEM field, and what do you attribute your success to?
So I always had an interest and a knack for science. And when I was a kid, my parents really encouraged me. I loved to play with toys that were usually branded boys' toys. I grew up in the 90s, and now I think we've really moved away from that in marketing and advertising, which is great. But I love to assemble model cars or do science experiments, or I wasn't as interested in dolls or teddy bears. Not that there's anything wrong with that either, but when I went to school, I had a really great teacher. I almost didn't take biology, and now I'm an environmental scientist, so I don't know if I could have ever had the career that I've had if I didn't have this teacher. Because the way that my schedule lined up when I went to take A-levels was that I couldn't fit biology and IT in together. So my teacher, Miss Artuk at Catholic school, she actually taught me biology in her spare time. So that's really, to have a teacher go out of their way for you like that has really made a difference, because now I'm doing biology every day and I love it. And I couldn't imagine any other future for myself. So I'm really grateful for her.
Thank you, Lauren. And what do you attribute your success to, in addition to your teacher?
My teacher and my parents, who just always encouraged me to take it. They never discouraged me from doing anything in the STEM field.
Are there any individual attributes that you think definitely helped to pave the way professionally for you?
I've always had a mathematical and an analytical mind. I always had a knack for them.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. China?
For me, it was plainly curiosity. Just like Lauren, I always had the knack for taking things apart, putting them back together, how they work, try to figure out why they work a certain way. Growing up, I didn't have any immediate family that was in a STEM-related field. So, for example, my dad's a businessman, my mom's an accountant. So when I was in high school, at Catholic also, I came across a chemistry teacher, Miss Buchanan, and seeing a woman teaching one of the hardest subjects was really inspiring for me.
Okay. Awesome. What about personal attributes?
For me, I find, I guess, my determination, which I got from my dad, my hard-headedness, just to figure it out.
Determination. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing. Namita, do you want to wrap that up for us?
I think I had quite similar paths too. I was telling the kids at the STEM workshop the other day, I did not have what the brand is a girl's dad. So my dad didn't know how to buy toys for neither of his kids. And he had 2 daughters. So he ended up buying blocks, trucks, anything that you could break and take apart. And so before I knew it, I've never owned a doll until I could buy it myself. So I think that was key. And I grew up in a very mathematically aligned family. I'm Indian by heritage, which kind of says the cliche sentence. My grandmother was a mathematician. My dad is a professor for MBA. So it was kind of, I would say, a little bit of genetics in there too. Math came easy to me, so I knew I was going to pursue somewhere in that path because I am a strong believer if something comes easy, then there's nothing wrong with making a career path out of it. But I also think I did work hard. When I want something, I'm always oriented towards setting myself a goal and achieving it. I don't like cutting myself short of long targets, even if it's hard. I'm always learning. I enjoy learning, so that I think kept me going. Even if something was difficult, I always found a way around it. Mm-hmm. I think that in general. So it did take me to where I am today. Right. But I do love my job, so I made the mistake of telling in an interview I would do this for free. So
and you almost are.
So I think being in love with your job makes every day a lot more easier to go and show up at work.
Absolutely. So I would 100% agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, I do this with pay. You can see that, right?
What?
We love. No, seriously. If we don't love our jobs, I can see it in Lauren. I can see it in China.
All of them.
If you don't love it, your work has become drudgery.
It's work,
and it doesn't matter how much you get paid.
Agreed.
Right? And this is very. So how, if I may then interject, how do we get our students to not, when they have that love, and for us as parents and teachers to inculcate that, but how do you fall in love with your job, with your career, with your subject? Because some of us like math, some of us like English, some of us love that stuff. Some of us found it to be, oh my God, I got to go to that class. Is that innate? You both said you had a mathematically inclined mind. Yeah. Or is that nurtured?
I actually believe it can be nurtured. I think a lot of the training programs, this is just my personal opinion, I feel like the mistake people make is targeting it at a later stage where, one, your brain development is kind of saturated, plus you've already set the next couple of years of your life, which starts with university and your job. It's too hard to get kids into anything new at a certain age. Where I believe you should strike is when they're from lower primary to upper primary. I think that's a great place to start, men or women, irrespective of, because if you want to teach something new, and then I think, like they've already said, teachers are a key. Dedicated teachers make a huge impact, and most of the training programs, I've been involved with robotics quite a bit, and you can tell the difference between the quality of students is the teacher. It's the teacher that goes that extra mile that makes the bigger impact and brings out that part in the kids, and giving them the opportunity, which fortunately Cayman has a lot of. It's just bringing the children there together. And then parents obviously are a key part in it too.
Absolutely.
And I think as we speak to education, perhaps I could ask this, but I think too many times we have these wonderful discussions, and as was shared. The resources are here, but oftentimes not as welcome, appreciated, nor accessed. The late Dr. Rudy said many times publicly, even here as a guest, that he would see the enthusiasm in the primary school, even from the very first class to the very last year of primary school, and then maybe the first year of middle school, and then shortly thereafter, that interest would wane. And I'm wondering if it's us as parents and as teachers, if it's what we're inadvertently saying. So to discourage unconsciously, how do we then ensure that we're not doing that child's propensity for learn, that innate interest in exploration, in science, in languages, in almost every subject, at some point gets kind of pushed to the margin? How do we reverse that?
Well, I think that's a parenting issue, and it sounds like it's a parenting challenge, because as parents we should be dedicated to raising this child to be the best version of themselves, of who they want to be, as opposed to who we want them to be.
Fair enough.
Right? Forcing a child to pursue a career just because this is my legacy kind of thing is not a healthy way of developing a good relationship with your child either, and it doesn't foster happiness either.
Right. But I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I take back to Ms. Lauren's comment. Thank you for sharing that. And this is not to critique, not to criticize anything, but just like the conflict in our schedules and the demands of the curriculum for one subject versus the next, sports versus academics, we're seeing it. And I'm wondering if it's parenting, education, societal policy, and the demands. So if your teacher and you didn't see your aptitude and your willingness to sacrifice, just like the two or three of you, you would not have had that opportunity to do that. That could be the same with an academic subject, an extracurricular activity, a hobby, or the like. So are we... Especially if it's not being, like what you're speaking to is, it's not being offered in the school systems, in all school systems, right? Because I think both of you are fortunate, to have that teacher presence, that opportunity in your schools. I don't know, to be exposed to more STEM-related opportunities, but that may not be the same. So the inequality is the inequality of it, and how it starts from very young, right? And so for us, that the whole idea of having a STEM girls camp, and we got such great feedback, and we opened up camp registration in a matter of 3-4 days. Camp registration was full. Why? There were several elements of it, right? We're talking about full day camp, a trusted expert, kind of like in the field of robotics, that was going to lead something, so there's already trust in that, and it's free. It's something that is accessible to everyone who is interested in it. And I think that element is not always there. That priority is not always there. And parents may not be interested in that. So it's a combination. I think when we look at, the STEM or just issues that we have at hand, we need to look at it holistically and not only place responsibility on one portion. Well, I do ask for your indulgence. We do have a quick break. Sure. This is a continuing discussion, not just for the next 15 minutes, but perhaps for the ensuing generations. All right, let's pause quickly. When we come back, we'll continue the discussion.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
Wouldn't it have been grand if you had purchased land 30 years ago? It may not be 2020, but a perfect vision has never been more clear. Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, poised for growth with an eye on the future. Your land, your history, your future. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
Cayman Turtle Conservation and Education Center invites you to join them on Sunday, April 3rd for their second annual Turtle Crawl 5K Walk and Run. All funds raised from the event will support the conservation of green sea turtles in the Cayman Islands. So come on out and show your support. The second annual Turtle Crawl 5K Walk and Run. Learn more and register now at www.turtlecrawl.ky. Proudly sponsored by HSM, Rotary Central, Advanced Fire Services, Gatorade, and Radio Cayman.
Attention parents and guardians. Any child who is 5 years old by 31st August must be enrolled in an approved educational program, including government, private or homeschooling program. Registration for the 2022-23 academic year begins on 1st April. Applications received before 1st April will not be considered. Detailed students' registration guidelines and forms are available on the Department of Education Services website at www.schools.edu.ky or by emailing edu.registration@gov.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thank you for joining us. And I say it publicly, and if it's incorrect, you let me know. The pillars in any society, and especially this one, a strong, robust education system, and equally healthcare system. And to be able to see these four, can I say, Mashami, young ladies? Four young, intelligent, ambitious, determined ladies, making a path and setting an example should show us that we have great to offer. So from the Family Resource Center, Ms. Charmaine Miller, and part of our discussion of Women in STEM as we celebrate, Women's Month, Ms. China, Ms. Lauren, and, Namatha, I think you would probably be seen as the mentor for the group. Would that be all right?
Just give me your title. Sterling. Well, we were having a really interesting discussion before on the break, and so I think that's a great segue into our next question, which speaks to the challenges, right? What challenges did you guys have to contend with being in a strongly male-dominated field, and how did you all address those?
Not all at once.
I'm not going to pretend that it's all been smooth sailing and that I've never had any issues in the workplace, but a lot of the challenges that I've faced have been mental. They've been feelings of insecurity. They've been feelings of imposter syndrome, like I don't belong here or I don't deserve this. Which really I have to combat by telling myself and telling any other women in STEM or any other people in anything that you deserve to be at the table. You earned your place there. You have value, and you have value to bring to the group that you're in. And that's really been helpful for me to combat those internal fears.
Great. Thank you for sharing. And I love the fact that you're bringing up the imposter syndrome. We are actually doing a webinar on Thursday that's focused on that because it shows up a lot in the workplace. And it's come up so often in various platforms this month. And it's a reality. It's a reality that just common self-doubt on kind of like, how did we end up here? Am I deserving of this? And will somebody find out that I'm not equally as competent as they are? So it's great that you're bringing that to our attention right now. China? What challenges did you have to contend with, and how did you address them?
So the first time when I finished my bachelor's, I went off to university to do my master's, and I got invited to a research group. And then I quickly realized I was outnumbered. Not only by being the youngest, I was the only female. At times, I similarly felt like I was very lonely. I had nothing to relate to, but I just kept focusing on the positives instead of saying, oh gosh, I'm the only woman here. It's like, no, oh gosh, I'm the only woman here. Like, this is an opportunity for me to showcase my talents, show that I deserve to be here as much as they are, and also potentially inspire other young girls to follow the path.
Awesome.
Awesome.
No.
When I started in a very different culture, a very different religious setting. So it's a culture where women don't work in general. So for me, it was a tough entry because I remember the first day I walked in. I was dressed in like a plaid shirt, a checkered shirt, and I had a backpack, which is how you walked into uni for so long. They sent me to intern section. They didn't realize I was a new employee. Then I realized dressing up appropriately was a key thing at workplace. So that I learned that on day one on orientation. But I also worked under someone who's never had a female staff in their entire career. So that didn't make it easy. At a meeting, I remember him once mentioning, because he didn't think I understood the language, that, women's place is in the kitchen. And I took that to heart very seriously because, one, I come from a family setup where women are louder than men. So I was never told I didn't have a seat at the table before. And the first time I learned that was in a department meeting. So that was not fun in any way. I remember going back home and actually being upset at it. I did write my resignation. I've written my resignation 7 times in my first job. I never send it, so because I'm stubborn. So I actually think everyone has their own challenges. It's not easy. It also depends on. When I did want to choose my master's, my dad wanted me to choose something else, similar in engineering, but he felt it would be much easier for a woman to find a job because it's still there are few women in that field. But the one I chose was completely male-dominated at that point. And looking back, at that point, I was very angry. I did get a scholarship, so I told him I can start the course without him. But looking back, I understand why he didn't want me to go through the process I did, because it wasn't easy. But once you get through it, you want to make sure that no one else has to go through it. So that's I did feel that pressure on myself. So there was a bit of mental pressure on yourself to make sure whoever comes after you does not get put through it. I don't think that's the one thing I did not enjoy, being the first female anywhere. Right. With my current employer, which is CSC, that was not an issue at all. It was the exact opposite, where men treated you just as much. You will always have outliers. You have to, as my mom says, that you have to learn to ignore the noise in between the songs. So sometimes, you have traffic while you're driving, right? So once you learn to recognize that and take it out, then it becomes easier. And also, learn to pick your battles. You can't fight all of it. But that's just everyone. I don't think that's just females. We just have it a little bit harder. I won't take that away from us, but there's ways around it. And it's about creating that system for yourself. And I remember this interview, and I like that quote, that when you step forward, you pull a woman along with you. And I think there's a lot of value in that. Yeah. And especially in this field, that's the only way to make sure you create that chain of, so after you, there's going to be 3, then there's going to be 6. So it's going to improve. And there's already an impact, but we shouldn't have to wait 200 years to see the big impact.
Exactly.
I think it's where these discussions help us, especially as parents, because from what I'm gathering, it's not just the assertiveness and your determination, but that environment from home, from the school. And now, as you've probably said, your employer saying, if you can cut the mustard and you can perform, we don't care who you are once you do the job. If not, here are the resources and you still can't do it. And that's what we would want it to be. It isn't always what it is, even in the 21st century, where you're looked at because of, male, female, nationality or whatever. Those are biases that we have to address. But we're making strong strides, no?
Yeah. And it's really interesting because hearing Namitha talk, it almost seems like now you've transitioned into this informal mentorship kind of role, right?
It's a responsibility.
It is. Yeah. It becomes our responsibility to make sure that we become, we're shaping the next generation of women that are joining us. And did you ladies have any mentors in your lives aside from your teachers and, your parents, or even right now within your workplace that are supporting you in that role? And are you seeing that transition into you becoming mentors yourselves?
In my first job, so I moved from Cayman to London, and I got my master's degree there. And then I was accepted into the graduate program for an engineering company there, and I worked there for a few years. And I did have a mentor when I first started, and he was a man. So it's not mentorship in the workplace doesn't just have to be women teaching women and men teaching men. In fact, that's at least my experience has been that there are fewer senior management positions that are filled by women, even if at the entry level there are equal numbers of women or men. But he really championed for me. So he met with me every quarter and would identify what kinds of work I should put myself forward for, and he worked to get opportunities for me in those fields. And my job at that time was in contaminated land and water, so I worked on construction sites. I was sort of the technical advice on construction sites to fix old petrol stations or old landfills, that kind of thing. So to be a young woman having to be in charge of older men working in construction, I felt really glad that I had him to support me and to help me make sure that I was doing the kinds of things that I should be doing. And at the Department of Environment, the director of the Department of Environment is a woman, which has been really positive for me to have such a strong role model. And everyone looks up to her. So it's just great to see a woman in power in that way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Did you have any mentorship experience at all as you're developing right now or even in the past?
When I was an intern at Water Authority, the head of the lab is Miss Marcella, and seeing a woman taking on the lab team, dealing with wastewater problems and water issues, it really inspired me, like, wow, she can take it on. Not only being exposed to those environments, I can see her inspiring other interns that were there, even students that were coming in just to check out the lab. So, yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
I would like to publicly, maybe beyond the month and for future discussions, and not just invite back the panelists, others, but give consideration to extend it based on what Ms. Lauren just said. Lauren, right? If that would not say, hey, I need that, you know. Male mentor, a female employee. Yes. And there's a growing concern of mine, just a personal one, I'll share it publicly, that in our endeavor to ensure that we bring all the Sunday to the table and to make sure that our girl, as we would say as parents, you know, our little girls get a chance to excel, that we're not also inadvertently reversing it, leaving the
man behind.
Yeah. And I think men need to step up as a person, because some of us, the way we carry ourselves, but that's another story for another time. I wouldn't want my young lady to be associated with some of us as young men, because we're just not cutting the mustard.
Right. And I think that kind of approach, when we talk about gender equality, there's a lot of misconception, right? That we are, we're pushing our women forward. We want them to succeed at the disadvantage of our men. That's not the overall vision of gender equality. It's about equal opportunities. That's what it's about. And having women, celebrating diversity and inclusion. That is what it's about. And that is what, this entire movement of doing Honoring Women Month and International Women's Day is about. So we actually just launched our mentorship program in the civil service, and moving forward, the vision is that we are expanding it to our men too, and we get to a place where we can have similar experiences as Lauren did. Yeah.
Well, this is encouraging. Yeah, and I think this is where we're starting to see, not politically, but socially, the move to ensure that we inculcate an ethos where we're about uplifting, empowering, encouraging, nurturing, educating all of us. The opportunity is there, but let's step up to the plate and make the best use of it, and then become the mentors and facilitate, further development. Ladies, I wish that we had scheduled more time. Maybe Ms. Shami will continue in another session another time.
Yeah, I think this was great. Unfortunately, there was just such natural discussion that took place. But just to wrap up, it would be great to just hear, what advice would you give the next generation of young girls and women that are seeking similar fields as yourselves?
My advice would be to try different things, to find and follow your passion and what you're good at.
Awesome, thank you. Nice and concrete.
I say go for it. Be different. Choose something you're passionate about, because at the end of the day, if you enjoy it, you're going to be naturally great at it.
I just, third that notion. I think just doing what you love goes a long way, makes your life easier and keeps you happy. At the end of the day, whether it's STEM or not, then that's my advice to anyone who's trying to start a career.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Shami, thank you. You and your team there. And I think we're going to see great things, not just for each of you individually, but I think collectively. You have that propensity to excel. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you for providing this platform for us.
Always an
and
honor.
Happy Honoring Women Month to everyone. We still have 2 weeks to go, so it's okay.
Let's honor.
We're not done yet.
Yeah, every day, every hour of each day. But congratulations, and may you continue to excel in your careers, and may your personal, professional lives bring you great satisfaction and reward. I'm going to pause and take a break, and you think this discussion was enlightening and encouraging? Come back for the next one. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Follow Radio K-Man on Twitter. All the latest information, breaking news, community events, and more. Follow us at twitter.com/Radio K-Man.
Today's biggest news.
Radio K-Man. Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio K-Man's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. On February 1st, 2022, Inspector Andre Tahal commenced the role of head of the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service Traffic and Roads Policing Unit. He succeeds Inspector Dwayne Jones, who has moved to uniform operation duties within the service. In international news, rescuers have found no survivors so far from a jet carrying 132 people which crashed in the hills in southern China. Crash investigators also had no information on why China Eastern Flight MU-5735 plummeted out of the sky on Monday. Recovery work at the site of the Boeing 737-800 crash in Guangxi province is being hampered by difficult terrain. The UN Secretary General says the rush to use fossil fuels because of the war in Ukraine is madness and threatens global climate targets. The invasion of Ukraine has seen rapid rises in the prices of coal, oil, and gas as countries scramble to replace Russian sources. But Antonio Guterres warns that these short-term measures might close the window on the Paris climate goals. He also calls on countries, including China, to fully phase out coal by 2040. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Liberal minority government has reached a deal with the New Democratic Party to stay in power until 2025. In exchange, the Liberals will support the left-leaning NDP on several of the party's key priorities in Parliament. Mr. Trudeau said on Tuesday that he believes the agreement will provide stability for Canadians. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio K-Man on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio K-Man app or log on to our website, radiokman.gov.ky.
Radio K-Man is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Captain Keith Parker Tibbetts, MBE, JP. Following the 1932 hurricane, like most young men growing up in Cayman in that era, the call of the sea was heard more strongly than any other. Keith Tibbetts Sr. of Cayman Brac was no different. After assisting with the rebuilding of the family home, resurrecting the family car, and helping other relatives and the community rebuild, he built and sold several catboats before going to Jamaica to seek employment as a seaman, and his long distinguished career got started on September 25th, 1935, when he stepped on board the schooner Admiral Sturdy, which his father built and was later sold to the Colonel family. A year later, he joined the Canadian banana boat Lady Somers in Canada. During his seagoing year, he visited several ports in England and made 11 trips around the continent of Africa, including a distinguished military career. This was part 3 of a special Sister Islands vignette series dedicated to Captain Keith Parker Tibbetts.
I'll be back. I've got 22 more days.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands, the ultimate staycation experience. Your culture, your freedom, the land that time forgot isn't gone. It's your Sister Islands.
Discover all that our Sister Islands have to offer.
Busy, busy, busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day.
Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. And thank you very much for joining us. And I believe that, especially now when our children are probably, well, back in the day when we did schooling, mock exams were coming up. If you didn't know what that is, ask your parents, they'll tell you. And Easter, and then summer graduation, children will be heading off to university, to work, to all sorts of things, even changing one school in one grade. So to be able to focus on education, to highlight the successes, especially for women, and the notion that programs like robotics and STEM are becoming commonplace. So the Senior Manager for Education Programs at Dartmouth, Ms. Glenda Targa, joins us. And, three wonderfully inspired ladies join us. Ms. Dartmouth will continue our discussion. I guess when you have something good, you keep it close to 4, right, Ms. Glenda?
Absolutely.
But good afternoon again to you. And thank you for joining us. And for this opportunity, and as we get through the discussion, maybe we'll appreciate the importance of the opportunities, the access, but us who are educators, parents, and the like, for ensuring that we are constantly encouraging, nurturing, and being willing to be sort of like that space and place where we see the incumbency on us to push forward, to serve as role models for those who come after. So, good afternoon, ma'am.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Sterling.
We look at things now in light of, say, I think back to the early days of computers in school, and there was a perception of who would go to the computer class. The computer lab was this space that was more off limits than the football field during exams. And now it's accessible to all. It was the only air-conditioned space that we had back then. Now the whole school is. And then everybody has a computer in their hand and manipulating it. So we've made some strides in that respect in terms of access to technology. But have we made sufficient strides in relation to accessibility and participation?
Yeah, and I think right now, most people would say that computers and digital literacy is more of a necessity. It used to be an optional, class, and I think these days it really is necessary. There are very few jobs that don't have some aspect of computer literacy to them. And now where we're going, and Miss Alison Smith can talk more about this, is really into the areas of programming. And so one of the things that the robotics program does is it teaches kids about, building a robot, designing a robot, but then also programming. And so, perhaps you want to talk about, programming and how important that's becoming. Even just basic programming now is part of the, the school curriculum, and students from even, year one are learning a little bit about programming.
Ms. Allison, especially good afternoon. And as you talk about it, I'm thinking, as Ms. Glenda was talking about programming and Raspberry Pi, for instance. When I first heard it, I was thinking, does this come with ice cream? Increasingly, now, is it that such programming, the availability, the similar ease with which it is deployed in classrooms, is that helping us to make the introduction and invitation to students, or is it making it so that it's almost plug and play, and there's no need now for the coding and all the higher level things that went on, a decade or 3 ago.
No, I think it's making it accessible. So even the younger students can get a go at it before they get older.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say it's taking away. I think it's adding to it. Over the years, it's less intimidating. More teachers are willing to try, more students are willing to try, and you see the results in the end. As long as you're understanding the algorithm behind it.
Okay. So we're teaching all of that as well, not just like obviously with even language translation, and plug it in and it helps you. Ms. Ruby, as a student, at some point we want to invite you, as you're comfortable, to share about your experiences as part of the team member on the robotics program, what it means. Is it the same for all of the students? Is it different for the female members in relation to their participation? Do they need a jockey to get to the front and to be heard? Or is it dependent on the perspective of the individual student?
Yeah, well, at the St. Ignatius team, right, we have like a couple departments. We have logistics department, mechanics department, and the logistics, mechanics, and the operations. Last year I was a part of the operations, so it's where like you have to make sure everyone's on top of everything. You're a part of the documenting. You learn a lot about the engineering process that way, so that's what I found beneficial about it. And everyone there, no matter whether or not you were female or male or whatever year you were in, your voice, that's what I like about it, your voice was heard. You could participate, you could ask questions, and everyone would answer and not make you feel any dumber, or they'd treat you respectfully. It's about respect there. And yeah.
No, thank you very much. And I think as we're seeing increasingly, the curriculum, for instance, in the school, with offering the subjects, we're seeing what probably still and hopefully increasingly less and less, the extracurricular things are now becoming more and more the norm, mainstream. So from the educator's perspective, Ms. Allison, we're integrating these things that were initially novel clubs after school to becoming maybe the first or second subjects of the day before break, so the mainstream.
Well, at my school, Cayman Prep and High School, we recognize the benefits of some of these extracurricular activities. We actually build it into our vertical learning as well. So for like the robotics, that was, as you said, just a club. We have a curriculum that's taught, and students who are super keen can extend that in the club setting. So you get to at least some of the introductions to everybody, and then the ones who are super keen, I said, would continue with a club.
Ms. Glenda, maybe let's turn back to you and the public. It's obvious that the parents who have their children in school, the schools who have the students, but sometimes the wider community may only hear about events long after the fact and only to a limited extent. But on Saturday, maybe there's an opportunity for us to sort of like how we would go to a culinary event or a sporting event. Maybe give us a preview.
This is going to be way more exciting than a culinary event.
Wow.
And I'm glad you mentioned sports, because this is like the Olympics of the brain, right? The Olympics of the mind. And so, one of the things that I wanted to get across to, the public today is that it's free, it's open to the public, whether you've got, young children that you want to, bring to the event, and so they can, see what robotics is all about. Then, please come along. The event is on this Saturday from noon until 5. And so, during that time, we're going to have 5 schools with 10 robots and about 80 students that are taking part in this, what we call an inter-school tournament.
Where is it going to be taking place?
It's going to be at the Commander Bay Arc.
And as a public, we can come?
Absolutely, and it's free.
It's
a family event. It's a great opportunity to, if you don't know anything about robots and you're interested in, how does robotics programs work, this is a great event to come out to and learn a little bit more about it. See the students in action, see these are robots that they have built from, very sophisticated parts, from designing the robot to do a particular task, building the robot, testing the robot, going back and rebuilding and retesting, and so it's it's a long process. It starts in October, and we generally around February or March. We had a bit of a delay this year because of the pandemic, but so it takes place over quite a long period of time. So most people who attend one of these events, the first thing they say is they're quite surprised to see the sophistication of the robots, and the students program them as well. So,
if I can ask them, Ms. Allison, because I think many times in the education setting we see, whether in the school or through the school, the child's participation is dependent upon A, B, C, D, and like. For the robotics program, how are students invited, selected? How is their participation engaged? I mean, how does that work?
Well, for us, we start robotics in our curriculum from year 7. And it's something that they grow with. The program that Ms. Glenda is talking about is what we'd have in Key Stage 4 and 5, so it'd be the 10s upwards. So having a history of robots along the way, we have already built the foundation. So what we're looking for now is just the willingness to put in the work, because it does take time to build, program, design, troubleshoot, and all the others. And these students are very independent.
All right. And I appreciate you explaining that to us. And I deliberately asked when I shared earlier that in school when I was way back, I think that was in 1341, BC. The invitation to be a part of the computering sort of era was looked at in a different way. Thankfully, it's not the same. So is it that your students just have to say, hey, I'm interested in this? Do you look at like how some of us would do? The coach would say, well, you don't even know the football from the, on the bench, so we're not going to bring you on.
No, we don't discourage any student. As as Ruth was explaining, we have different departments. So if you have an interest, we see where your talents lie. Okay. And we move you around accordingly. With the aim of being exposed to everything. Yeah. Okay. But, emphasizing on where your strengths are so that they can feel confident and comfortable participating.
Yeah. Like Ruby, you started when you were at Clifton Hunter, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so what you did in that first year is probably very different than what you're doing this year, kind of, 4 years later. Or 5
just a little
bit.
Later.
Yeah. Good.
And thank you for that. Because could I ask then through you that you talked about, being logistics, operations, and mechanical, was it?
Yes.
Right.
Mechanics.
So when you first started in the government school, now you're in A levels, not just where this may take you in terms of career, but your first introduction was this. Has it been a gradual progression in terms of not only academics but application, and how has it changed? When you first came to robotics and to what you're doing now in preparation for competition, but also learning.
Yeah, when I first came into robotics at Clifton, it was just fun. It was like putting pieces together. You're like, ooh, this bar does this now. It was interesting, and I didn't know how to program at all. So just watching like the members who did know a bit about programming, like do what they were doing, it was like, wow, that's really cool. And so it sparked more my interest in like the mechanics and mechanical engineering aspect of it. So I ended up choosing subjects that would gear me towards a career in mechanical engineering, which were like computer science and maths and physics. So now that I continue robotics at St. Ignatius, not only does it look great on CV for like when I'm applying for universities, but it continues to be fun to just work with a team and partake.
Thank you. And perhaps before I ask Nami, Ms. Allison, from that perspective, you talk about inviting the students. And it's with everything. As teachers, as parents, we think you would be good at this, or you should try this. Sometimes if the mother is a doctor, chances are the child may want to be as well because of introduction. If the mother's an electrician or plumber, likewise. With that and with the programming that you have through your curriculum, how are your students sort of giving that first intro?
Well, I would say one of the things I would say teachers need is enthusiasm. You have to enjoy it for them to enjoy it. You have to break it down to even a grade level below the class you're teaching. So make it super easy to get them hooked. And then they can take it from there, because students most times are naturally curious. Yes. And once they get the hang of something, they'll run with it.
If I may then ask, because I think many times we start to appreciate, and I use sports as an example because that was probably the one that we knew. We have the Ireland, sports competition. Then we have it across football, globally and regional and locally. Academic competitions are not always seen to be that. This robotics challenge, it's countrywide, inter-school.
It is. So we invite all schools, public and private, to participate, and I'm sort of the person that facilitates the the kits and parts and things that schools need. There have been schools where a teacher who doesn't have the mechanical background says, "Look, I really like this, and I really think this is great for my students, and so I will, take it on." And at which point we have volunteers that are part of the program. So part of our sponsor, for example, CUC is one of our sponsors, and so there are a lot of the engineers that work for CUC that come along and help out with the program through mentoring, through going into the schools and helping a teacher that perhaps doesn't have a mechanical engineering background. So it's absolutely accessible. And so all they need to do is just, commit to the program and host their meetings in their club and build a robot.
If I then could maybe ask this first, Nami, with you, we probably can see the importance of the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic way back when, and in the Cayman economy, some listening, well, why robotics? Despite the understanding that not long ago the U.S.'s Bureau of Labor Statistics indicated that there were 1 million jobs, STEM-related, that they couldn't fill. And there were 330 million people, so that's going to be potential 1 million people that they would attract to their shores. From the employee as well as the employer's perspective, STEM education, robotics particularly, how does that translate into employability, career opportunities? Ms. Nami?
I think it's the ability to learn. Robotics is, it's based on students' intuition. Putting that to a skill set that you can actually see turn into a product that can facilitate an action. That process brings out a lot of things. Like Ruby was saying, logistics. I mean, if that is not employable in today's world, I don't know what is. Supply chain is one of our biggest issues. So that's one. Operations is actually, we have 3 operations departments. So these, irrespective of how or what the task is at hand, the skills you develop from all these are just transferable. And I think that's the key with engineering. We always say, half of the stuff you learn in engineering, you might not end up using in one job because it's going to be very specific. But you learn the ability to transfer skills. You learn the ability to learn new things faster. And having worked with these kids in robotics, it's very easy to see how the path they're going to be on. The success is very evident for them because it's the skill sets. It's not did they manage to get the gear ratios correct. It's more about did they go through the right process on finding the gear ratios. It's that the mental development that comes along with it. That's the key, I think, in robotics. And robotics is great for that because it pushes multiple areas of your brain at the same time. So it gives you a wider development in your skill set compared to just picking a specific area and working only there.
As we go into, we have a caller on the line, but as we go to the caller, is then, we've heard it often, he has an engineering mind, that you guys will share your mathematical, analytical. So that's teachable then. That's not just something that you either have or you haven't. That's teachable.
I believe so. I actually believe it's 100% developable.
And I would say the age. If you want to teach, start early.
So it's too late for me then, is what you're saying?
No, well, I guess you'll come with wisdom of age too.
The smaller kid.
But it's easier for a young child.
Yes.
It's always amazing to see, young children pick up a package of like Lego robotics, and with very few instructions or anything, they start, building something and putting something together. So it's the earlier you start, I think, the more curious a student is.
All right. Well, can I invite each of you to don your headsets? I use mine to keep my hair in place, and it looks cool. We have a call online as we go to the phones. Miss Glenda McTaggart from Dart. We have Miss Alison Smith, one of the teachers at Cayman Prep. Miss Namatha over at CUC, and then one of the syndication students, Miss Ruby, as our guest. Hey, good afternoon and welcome, and thanks for calling.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Yeah, good conversation you got going on there this afternoon, and I think it's all been kind of revolving around education, the education system, correct?
Well, we have two educators in the studio, yeah. So it's empowering and encouraging and nurturing through education and STEM in particular.
I think earlier there was a grand example of teachers where I think one of I guess it was a student mentioned that her teacher had taught her
biology
on the side, as the old folks say.
Yes, sir. So she was now employed with DOE.
Yeah, and and I thought back to the many teachers of that same mindset that you never hear mentioned, in the Cayman context. Miss Ridley, Miss Beulah, Miss Miss Genevieve and Mr. McManee, Mr. Spurgeon, and Mr. Lee, and the rest of them. But anyway, that's just in the conversation. But moving forward, you're into talking about robotics, and of course that does a lot for the logic and the rationale of the mind. And thinking back 75 years ago, we didn't have robotics, but we were crafting model schooners or boats that could sail the best, or that would be the best model on the floor. So it's good to hear that this kind of stuff is still going on in the schools, and that we're getting into robotics now. That's moving up pretty fast. So,
I will add one comment. We have a former student who's been part of our robotics program, and they are now over in the UK working for one of the biggest shipbuilders. They're a marine engineer and working on some very high-tech, 3D modeling programs. And so they shared with me some of the things that they do. And when they're back home from the UK, they often stop by our robotics clubs and share with the students the kinds of things that they're doing. So yes, marine engineering is really important, and given the history of this country.
Yeah, right. And I was going to ask the question: has any of the projects that's on the floor for this year, are any of them in the maritime realm?
This year, our project or our challenge is based on transportation and logistics. So every year it's something different. So that could be something that you might see in the next year or two.
Yeah, but when you mention transportation, well, you go back. You got 50. You go back 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago. Maritime was the main transportation for the Cayman Islands.
Yeah.
One of the it's good to hear that those kind of programs are going on, because I think it really explores what's between our ears, the logic and the rationale that comes into play all during life. Anyway, I'll let you go. Good program.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you. And as you're going through the break, Ms. Glenda, I have managed, thankfully, if you have a few extra minutes, we can continue if you guys wish. As long the focus on education, the celebration of our women in particular. We look at our mothers, our grandmothers, our sisters, and our daughters, and we see the great work. I say this only to ask that at some point that statue that's in town celebrating our women one day becomes as big as the country, and even then it's not big enough to show our respect and our appreciation for their sacrifice. So maybe today, you might be inspiring the next cohort who become the governor, the premier, the chief of the world in engineering. Never know, right? All right, let's pause and take a break. When we come back, we'll talk today.
Subway is serving up a special new sauce, bursting with flavor in every bite. The new Savory Collection is a tropical sweet and spicy sauce made with a combination of spices, habanero peppers, thyme, onion, black pepper, ginger, citrus juices, and molasses.
So good. Wow. Sensational.
Subway's Savory Collection. pairs perfectly with our oven roasted chicken or steak sub. Savor the flavor. For a limited time, only at Subway. Subway. Eat fresh.
Did you know that ValueMed Pharmacy has a free online prescription service? Managing your health and medical requirements has never been easier with ValueMed. Simply visit value-medpharmacy.com. That's VALU-medpharmacy.com and click the Refill Prescriptions tab on our website. Fill in the information for new prescriptions or refills and choose your preferred pickup location. ValueMed on Walkers Road or Town. Then bring in your original prescription from your doctor when picking up. There's no need to stand in line and wait for your prescription. Save time and pick up prescriptions at your convenience by visiting value-medpharmacy.com. That's VALU-medpharmacy.com.
Cardinal Avenue may be closed, but La Perfumerie 2 remains open. La Perfumerie 2 has an expertly curated collection of fragrance, skincare, and cosmetics, and is available for appointments with our trained beauty consultants. Customers can avail of free parking at Bayshore Mall. No need to drive around town looking for parking. Want to call and collect? Call 815-7492 or email perfumery2@kirkfreeport.com with your order before 2 p.m. and collect from Kirk Gallery Bayshore Mall at 4 p.m. same day or next day. Full details at kirkfreeport.com.
You can now book and pay online for your certified lateral flow test at www.hsa.ky/appointment. It's fast, easy, and convenient. Certified LFTs are $25 per test per person. HSA's testing center is located at 131 Center, McClendon Drive, behind Foster's Airport. Walk-ins for certified LFTs are also available. Need a PCR test for travel? These are now only $75. Visit hsa.ky/appointment for more information.
As seniors, we owe it to each other to stay safe and healthy through this pandemic. Let's make sure that our COVID-19 vaccinations are up to date, including getting boosters, and be aware of your surroundings so that we can manage the conditions that make us more vulnerable. Remember, we're in this together. So do your part. Get boosted. You can visit www.gov.ky/coronavirus to learn some more.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon, and as we get a chance to talk about one of the dark programs Minds Inspired and the Robotic Challenge, Ms. Glenda McTaggart, the Senior Manager of Education Programs, and together with, three wonderful individuals. Ms. Damatha, thank you for, giving your time, and thanks to your employer for understanding the importance of serving as role models and mentors and allowing, their team to be the wonderful examples, and to you, as electrical engineer at CSC, to understand that we fail many times in a way where we don't realize that we're the first ones to blaze that trail, but we also have to take up the mantle. So as we go through the discussion, I invite Ms. Allison over at Cayman Prep, and of course Ms. Ruby as a student, publicly, if there are any of your classmates or teachers or their colleagues listening, would they forgive us for holding on to you for a few extra minutes as part of this educational and encouraging?
I don't know. I'm going to pray, so.
We're going to pray with you.
Yeah.
But I do know that your presence here collectively means that you're not present elsewhere. So this time, you will have to make up for in some facet, whether it's a late lunch. But thank you for that, because I think in what you're sharing, us as parents, us as other adults will be inspired to continue to mentor, to encourage others to take up. If I might, though, perhaps first, Ms.
I was going to say, well, these two ladies here have made a lot of sacrifices for First Robotics, through the programs that they, do in school. Also, they were part of our entourage that went to take the first global team to Dubai in 2019, the last time we got to travel. So they're very familiar with, again, the importance of this program and taking our students out there and getting them on the world stage of robotics.
May I ask, I think sometimes many of us need to have an objective. We need to see that there's an end goal. For some of us, thankfully, it's all because of the opportunity, the education, what we'll get from it. But for some of us, well, we won't do this thing unless we see a thing. But there's a wonderful benefit. You talk about Dubai. Switzerland's coming up in October. How is it? How is the selection of that national robotics team?
So on Saturday we have our inter-school tournament. So that's our Freight Frenzy, which is going to be, all of the schools. And the way First Robotics works is no one school competes against all the other schools. So you're competing with an alliance. So in one match, the team that you're aligned with may be your partner, and then the next match they may be your opponent. So it really it's sort of based on the gracious professionalism, because you don't know whether you're going to be with someone or against them, right? So the students really learn good, sort of people skills and cooperation, right? Not just competition, but cooperation. So once the tournament ends, it's not over then. We have a selection panel. We look at all of the students that participated in this tournament, and schools will make nominations for the individuals that they believe are best suited for the Cayman Islands National Robotics team. And then all summer, that team works to build a robot that they're going to be taking to Geneva, Switzerland, to compete. And about 180 different countries participate in that program. So it's a great experience. It's a great opportunity. And that's what we have to look forward to once we complete the tournament on Saturday.
Yeah. I guess like many programs, Ms. Allison, it is the school through its teachers and that make the nominations and help with the selection. I can think of art, sports, almost everything, the debating team. Teachers usually are the ones who have the first insight into the students. Is there another way for a student to step up, or another member of the community to say, hey, little Susie here, she's a little bit timid, but she's willing to try out.
No, but even as a teacher, we don't just look at maybe how you participate verbally, or if you're one of those energized. We see what you're doing behind the scenes. We see the silent workers. We see the knowledge behind the eyes. We can recognize talent when we see it. It doesn't have to be in the form of a outgoing child. It could be a quiet child. Sometimes the quiet ones are the smartest ones. So you just have to encourage them and put them forward and hope they were willing to go forward, because we're not forcing them, but we try everything in our power to encourage them to let their light so shine.
This is where I think the community, Ms. Glenda, on Saturday can come out, get aware of what's happening, to see it. You may not be a parent, or your children may have long grown, and but to be able to draw alongside and encourage. It's the Olympics in a sense, right?
Absolutely. And this event takes a lot of volunteers, and so we're thankful to our sponsors. So Digicel, CUC, Marie, Health City. Those are all companies that have a good track record for STEM education. So they come out and volunteer. We've got volunteers from DART, from other companies that just have an interest in engineering and helping really get students sort of interested and curious about engineering, robotics, and STEM in general. So going back to what we were talking about, the selection process, we also are building, like any sort of team. If it was a sports team, you're building sort of the best team. So you've got to have students with different skills and different complements. So you might have one or two students that are really good at programming, other students that are really good with logistics, others that are good with operations. But at the end of the day, it's also a team. So over the summer, you're building that team and making sure that they all can work well together and in a unified team that's going to put this country, again, we're going to be on the world stage and have a good showing for the Cayman Islands. All
right. I want to ask Ms. Rube as a student something first, but as an educator first, Ms. Allison, you referenced earlier the importance of having, my words, the foundation to approach certain things. If it's a sport, you taught in football, dribbling, the pass, and the control. Then you develop through training and practice and exercises. I would imagine math and the propensity to get exposed to coding comes up. Go back to my question with Raspberry Pi. I know it's almost to some extent plug and play, but then you have to learn how to manipulate through the coding. How much of the math, the coding, and the technical skills are still very important in the overall outcome of the success?
Now, we think about education, we think about independent, critical thinkers. We think about people who are able to problem solve, people who are logistics, in terms of programming, almost every subject's come into play. You're thinking about the creativity, you're thinking about the logistics, thinking about the math. When you think, before you can code, you have to do the algorithm, step by step. You have to break it down. I tell the students, if you can't do it, you can't make the machine do it. So you have to figure out every step, every instruction that you need to put down on paper. And that's coming from, if I say, okay, how do you solve a Rubik's Cube? You have to know the math and the science and the algorithm behind it. So or you could be there playing with it for the whole day and achieving very little. So which we believe in every subject, especially the core subjects, playing a role in getting the students where they need to be. Robotics is more like the icing on the cake.
Okay.
Something that something because it's tangible. Students are switched on. Like, I can see it working. So they're very keen at that point. But behind that is the codes. They have to sit down for hours troubleshooting and testing to make that happen.
So as a student, from that perspective, you're going through your formative years, A levels, next step, university, and like Ms. Nami, graduate school, employment, and wherever that'll take you. How has that process been, and how much of the academic component translates into what Ms. Allison is saying with the practical application?
In terms of robotics?
In terms of robotics, yeah.
Well, to be honest, not really much in terms of math. Because it's not entirely, it's not too extremely complex. It's not like you're building a building. You just have to, you plan, you draw up a design. Right, the design process, the design stage, that's very fun. It's probably the most enjoyable bit because you get to argue with everyone on which design you think would be better. But when you're finally building it, and that's when you my dad says, you measure twice, cut once. That's when measurements come into play. That's probably where a bit of your math is. But I'd say in terms of, like you said, foundation skills earlier. Communication skills, if they're not there when you start robotics, they're there when you finish. You learn them, you develop your skills in terms of communication, and I think you gain a bit more confidence too if you're working with a team. But yeah,
no, I appreciate that, and thank you for that, because I think it's encouraging mainly for parents when we would say, because we ourselves didn't enjoy math or something. Now,
I'd like to add, one of the things we do as educators, they don't even know they're learning or what skills they're using, because she has no idea the math behind because it's commonplace for her. She understands angles, she understands ratio, she understands percentages, she understands weight,
but it's
mass.
That practical side of it, right?
Right. So because she understands it to the point where it's a part of her, she doesn't think of it as math anymore. Because maths for her is probably along the lines of calculus and differentiation. But if she had no maths foundation, we would have a different conversation altogether.
It brings me back to a couple summers ago when we were preparing to go to Dubai, remember? And it was all about why the robot you had to pick up a piece and it had to hurl it across the room because it had to go into something as part of the game, and so the students could not figure out why in the world is this not shooting the thing far enough, right? Until NAMI stepped in and said, well, let's just break down the math and started writing on the formulas, and the students are like, oh yeah, we knew that, but they didn't understand the one little piece that they hadn't got quite right in terms of the angle to make this thing shoot a little higher. So to your point, I think they don't even realize they're learning it and using it until something maybe doesn't quite work, and then you have to redirect them back to the math behind it.
Analyze it a bit more.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I'm mindful, but I'll leave this for conversation with Nami another time. But it brings me to the point, because I think both student and teacher have quite publicly underscore what is important. In our teaching and learning of things, we present it sometimes with the theory and take away the practical application of it. It's like economics, right? We do economics every day. Your choice to remain here is an opportunity cost because you can't be elsewhere. And yet we don't say, well, I consciously made an economic decision. Right? And so to maybe the final question asked to Nami in terms of the notion of whether it's your parent, your grandparent, and the math sort of approach. Is it that we're making math in particular that thing that is like a foreign language and only for some in certain applications?
Well, I think math is probably one of the most universal languages, right?
Mm-hmm.
Numbers are the same. And I think for an employability perspective, it's probably one of the subjects that has the largest spread out discipline. So if you know math, it opens up a lot of areas for you. I don't think not all engineers end up in engineering jobs. It's a key thing to always remember. It's the ability, the logical thinking, the analytical mind. It's always the development of the brain that makes you versatile to fit into any position. So I wouldn't say math is going to just make you employable, but it is definitely going to make you give you the options to find what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not. I believe it's not for everyone. That's why we need doctors and we need other professions as well.
Mm-hmm.
But robotics also has so many broken down smaller areas for development that we had a PR person the last time we took the team, and it's key because at the end of the day, if you can't sell your product, no one's going to buy it. If no one knows its existence, who's going to pay money for it? So I think robotics is a platform that gives you that it's the closest you will find to a company where there's different jobs. So robotics is just not math. It's a package deal of everything, including STEM. That's the way I see robotics.
Awesome. Well, as we close our discussion, as a student, if you wish to say and share anything finally, and then we have the educator and then Professor Glenda, what would you like to say to not just your classmates, to their parents, but to the wider community, especially when we look at where economies are going, the government's investment in education and in infrastructure, and maybe just even opportunities to love doing what you do and have the opportunity to be able to do it without leaving the shores forever?
Yeah, well, if you think by looking at the robots being built or anything about any aspect that you've seen, maybe if you go to this weekend to CIS from noon to 5, but if you see anything there that you're like, oh, that's kind of cool, and you want to try it out, don't hesitate to. Even if you're like a girl and you see that there aren't many girls on the team, and you're like, oh no, that's kind of scary. Or if you don't know much about robotics anyway, it's a learning experience. And if you don't like it, you can say you tried it. It's fun if you are willing to try it. So go for it.
To start with, thank you. Congrats to you, and all the best in your continued educational pursuits. All right.
Thank you.
From the educator's perspective, because sometimes it's the parents in partnership with the teacher that leads the child not just to success, but to enjoyment.
I'd like to say thank you to all the parents who have been for the students who I've had on my different various teams, because whether it's on a Saturday or after school, the pick up, the drop off, the way to the parking lot. I had a student wouldn't leave yesterday because poor father in the parking lot for 1 hour while he tried to decode and solve his own problems with the robot. So I respect and I appreciate the parents. I know the students, they're still young to be independent in terms of transportation. I mean, in my classroom, they are very independent. They problem solve and so forth themselves. I want to say to the parents as well, we don't have to go overseas to celebrate our students. When they go away and we see how much of a big deal the other countries make over these tournaments, here at home, I want to see the same kind of energy. I want to see the parents coming out and supporting the students, even if it's not your child, it's somebody's child. and let them see that we appreciate and we respect what they have achieved all these months of work, because it's a lot of work. And I just want to say, teachers, we learn together. Every year the software changes, the equipment changes, the connections change. I'm learning, the students are learning. Miss Smith, I figured it out, like, come show me. So we're learning together. I've been doing this for over 10 years and I'm still learning. It changes all the time. Don't be intimidated. You just need a good team, a few willing students, and just give them the time and your enthusiasm, because I find that they'll come around you more when you're that kind of person. You pull them towards you. I'm happy for the school I'm in, Cambridge High School. We've been very supportive of me just on the team, just trying to achieve the best we can. And the Dart Foundation for providing the extra equipment for us to go even further. We started with Lego League, now we're on the First Tech Challenge, and it's amazing to watch the children grow. The independence, the problem solving, the teamwork, it's awesome. So please come out on Saturday and support us. We'd love to see you, even for half an hour. Just come and have a peep. And let the traffic flow, come have a peep and see what's going on, and we'll share with you. You can give us your ideas. The feedback from the public will help us to grow and to make it even more awesome. And it's all the schools, private, public, all the schools. It's not just private schools. All the schools will be there. So there's no reason for you to not turn up and support. You must know somebody in one of those schools. Thank you.
Ms. Namatha, if you have any sort of closing remarks.
I think it's a great opportunity. I would tell the parents everything Miss Allison just said as well, and the mentors to step in. And robotics sounds scary, but it's not. Once you get into it, it is a lot of fun. And for parents who have kids that are not interested in robotics, this is the first time to give them a glimpse of it. So irrespective of what their age is, because we took a small child who, a kid of a mentor who showed up, a small girl who's only 9, and when she left, the only thing she had to say is, "This is the best place ever." This was a practice session. So you'd be surprised by what your kids are interested in. So you don't know yet. So expose them to as many things as possible, and this is free. In other countries, you have to pay to go and watch tournaments. This is free. It is 15 minutes from your places. Just show up, bring your kids, give them, let them talk to the kids that are there. Expose them to all these things, and you'd be surprised by how quickly kids learn and grow from these events.
Indeed. Ms. Glenda.
So we've shared with you some of the points about the importance of the program. And we've got all these young budding engineers that will be out on Saturday. So come along and see what they've built. They're quite proud of their work. So we can do that. People say to me, why do you do this? And the reason I do it is because of students like Ruby. I met her in about 2017 when she was the only girl in a marine engineering summer camp. Oh, yeah. And I was so impressed by her. Within the first day, she was showing all the boys how to use a power drill. And so I knew that we would be friends. So, it's really important that, you encourage the young ladies that are in the program. So again, we've got lots of girls in the program, so come out and see them. As we said before, it doesn't end with the tournament. We'll be going on to select our national team and preparing to go to Geneva. So hopefully we'll come back the next time with our team, and we can tell you all about what we're doing with that. So my final shout out is just to the sponsors that the sponsors also provide a lot of opportunities for the kids. So they were selected because of their track record for STEM education. And when we get ready for the competition, we have various events. So for example, with Health City, students go there and talk to robotic surgeons, understand how robotic surgery is done, the equipment. They visit CUC and learn all about generating energy and solar and all of that. And the same goes true with RMRE and their mathematics and Digicel in terms of technology. So all of those sponsors of the program, in addition to DART, are important part of making this happen for students. So.
And I commend each of you. The corporate sponsors or educators sometimes, we don't always appreciate them publicly as we should. We recognize their sacrifice. But if I can say, the professionals who give of themselves. My comment about you being here and having to, delay lunch or go back to work and make up for the time is recognized, it's appreciated, and it's invaluable. But to the students as well, you choose to do something that, for many, not only sets as an example, but shows the determination, that commitment. And together, hopefully on Saturday, as we will go and cheer on, the music recital or the football match or the school program, this is another opportunity to, at the very least, see that there's more and more opportunities for our children. And it's not, as you said, it's free. It's something that we need to avail ourselves. So looking forward to it.
I was going to say one last thing is there's more information on our website. So mindsinspire.ky.
Okay, mindsinspire.ky. Well, looking forward to future discussion with your team and with this whole program. All right, we're going to pause and take a break. I'm going to see if there's any chocolate left in my drawer. Not just kidding. When we come back, more talk today.
Something big is coming to Radio Cayman.
Have you heard? Well, what is it?
For 3 days only, April 5th to 7th.
I know what it is, but I can't tell you. Ma, you don't know? How you know?
You don't want to miss this.
Well, hurry up and tell us now.
Radio Cayman is offering something big for all our advertisers. Contact rcsales@gov.ky or get in touch with your account executive to learn more.
So you really not gonna tell us?
From boat days to beach gatherings, leave the catering to Subway. Choose from small and large sandwich platters, double meat wrap platters, and top it off with optional cookie platters for dessert. Or ask about our Subway box to go with the option of 6-inch or foot-long sandwich, 1 cookie, and 1 bag of chips for all occasions and celebrations. Let Subway focus on the food so you can focus on the fun. Visit subway.ky for catering options. Subway. Eat fresh.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab. Blood test, x-ray, and mammogram, all of that is MedLab. Affordable fees and friendly service, a full professional team. MedLab is always comfortable, MedLab is always clean. For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Call 949-7331 and ask about MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
Calling all amateur bakers in the Cayman Islands. Celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, taking part in the Cayman Islands Platinum Cake Competition. His Excellency the Governor Martin Roper invites you to submit your homemade dessert recipe to the Governor's office by April 3rd. Win a chance to have your dessert recreated for the Queen's birthday party in June. Do you have what it bakes? Well, submit today at gov.ky/Jubilee.
From district to district, moving through the waters to Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. Your station, your voice. All things Cayman. One radio, many people. This is home.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman. Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. 8 Cayman Islands Fire Service firefighters have earned their IFE Level 2 certificate in fire science, operations and safety, having successfully completed a 3-hour 120-question exam, which they sat in October 2021. In international news, Russia's most prominent opposition figure, Alexei Navalny, has been given 9 years in a strict regime penal colony in a fraud case rejected by supporters as fabricated. Navalny was detained when he returned to Russia last year after surviving a poisoning he blamed on the Kremlin. He is already serving 3.5 years in jail for breaking bail conditions while in hospital. Tesla boss Elon Musk has opened a huge electric car Gigafactory near Berlin, which is the first European hub for the firm. The plant was delayed for 8 months after local authority licensing problems. The more than €5 billion factory is the biggest investment in a German car plant in recent history. A Russian billionaire sanctioned by the UK says he no longer owns many former properties, potentially putting them beyond the reach of law. Ex-Arsenal shareholder Alisher Usmanov's £82 million London home and Surrey mansion were put into trusts linked to the oligarch. This raises questions over the effectiveness of sanctions imposed since the invasion of Ukraine began. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Let me tell you something. I've been fishing our island since I was a boy, and it's getting harder and harder to get a good catch. Maybe it's because there are so many more people in Cayman than ever before. Maybe it's because of how the climate is changing. I don't know about that, but I do know that I want to be able to keep fishing and teach my children to fish one day as well. So it makes sense to me that we have certain areas and certain times of the year to fish for certain things. This year, a new rule was placed on fishing for grouper that says no one can fish for nass or grouper anywhere in Cayman from December 1st to April 30th while they're spawning. There is also no fishing allowed at all for any kinds of fish in the spawning zones, and no scuba diving there either. It feels unfair not to be allowed to fish where my dad taught me to fish, but I know that being patient now means we can keep fishing for many more generations. We're all in this together, right?
For more info, download the Cayman DOE app or visit doe.ky.
Youth Fox. The program for all people, by young people. Youth Fox.
Hey, it's Tasha from Brock. Remind you to tune in to Youth Flex on Wednesdays from 4 to 5.
Coming up on The Flex, hear how our overseas recipients have made their mark in Cayman.
Youth Flex. You can also join us on YouTube Live for Youth Flex, the program for all people, by young people. Youth Flex. More and talk.
Shout out to all my Brockers.
Youth Flex. More and talk. More and talk.
Something big is coming to Radio Cayman.
Have you heard? Well, what is it?
For 3 days only, April 5th to 7th.
I know what it is, but I can't tell you. Ma, you don't know? How you know?
You don't want to miss this.
Well, hurry up and tell us now.
Radio Cayman is offering something big for all our advertisers. Contact rcsales@gov.ky or get in touch with your account executive to learn more.
So you're really not going to tell us?
Raising children is costly. That is why each year the Ministry of Education provides, through its Early Childhood Assistance Program, funding to assist Caymanian children to attend an early childhood center. For early childhood funding assistance, call the Early Childhood Care and Education Unit at 244-3155 or 936-0267, or download an application form from the Ministry's website at www.gov.ky/education and email the completed form to ecap@gov.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And we invite you to be a part of a discussion if there's a comment, a question, a query, or just something in particular you're not quite sure which category it falls in, but you want to say it. So use this medium or platform that we provide to communicate. Sometimes you feel as if you're the only person feeling that way, thinking that way, only to find out that, like you, they too were waiting for someone with the courage, the conviction, and perhaps the eloquence to present what they were thinking in a way that others can understand. Sometimes we don't give ourselves sufficient credit for having the aptitude, but also we don't recognize that we have access. So let's use the resources that are available to us, and let's use the talk shows as a way to share publicly. Now, I always believe in being as positive as possible and provide an environment where the discussion is as engaging and enlightening as possible. The commentary, if it's constructive, doesn't necessarily have to be something that agrees and leads to consensus. But if it's constructive, we ask increasingly our education system to graduate critical thinkers, and yet we condemn the children who may ask questions, repeatedly ask questions, as unfortunately label them as being troublesome and this and that. But that inquiring mind is where we lead to greater discovery, lead to greater engagement, and sometimes not just enjoyment, but edification. So this Saturday, for instance, at the Arc in Kamana Bay, near the school there's the Robotics Challenge. You may have not heard of it. You may have a perception of what it's like. You may go and be surprised at the level of engagement. You may go and say, well, wait a minute, for a nation that wants to be labeled as first world, do we also know about this? Can we not also have that? And you might be able to volunteer. You may all, so be able to contribute some resource, financial or otherwise. So let's go and let's actively participate in a very positive way to make sure that our society advances in a healthy way, the very best possible step forward. 949-8037. Toll free with the kind compliments of flow. 1-800-534-8255. And even if there's something that you think that, well, it's not even being acknowledged, so how can it be addressed? Well, you may be concerned that if you say it, then many might say, oh, here he goes again, making trouble or nitpicking. Well, sometimes, we need to share what others only wish they had the courage to say. I'll give us an example. Every single one of us in this society wants every single one to be safe, to be able to move about safely in the society, to know that the opportunities that exist are there for all and sunder alike. The reality is that as much as we may want, well, it's not equal access. It's not that because you know doesn't mean that everybody else knows, or that even the person you assume, a sibling or other household member, co-worker or neighbor, that because you know they know. And unfortunately, we only find out too long after the fact. And it may be something that strikes you to the core. Or you didn't know that Johnny moved away and resettled elsewhere. Or Johnny left the employment, or that Johnny started a new business, or maybe even worse, there's an illness or a death or the like. Because we are busy in our society. We are sometimes so engaged with what we're doing that you're just treading water, and we are challenged to be consciously involved in the lives of those we want to, or aware of the happenings in the lives of those that we care about. But nonetheless, how do we ensure that our actions add value to not just our lives, but the lives of others? Well, give us an example. As simple as it is, it's inflammatory. We look at the return of the cruise ship yesterday. We know that many have asked the question and then made the observation. Well, as the cruisers come ashore, will they be required to wear a mask? If they're not wearing masks, is it that now we've moved away and the mask mandate, like the UK and other places, need to be replaced? Is it that it's an issue that, how do you enforce it? Now, there may be some who will share, well, it's still safety that it should be paramount. What do we do and how do we do it? Well, without a healthy, respectful discussion, not just with and to and for the public policy and legislation, how do we get there? Well, maybe you can weigh in and share your thought. I'll give it to you. This is only the first day following the arrival of the cruise ship, and I've already had perhaps 4 handfuls of individuals that we almost 50-50 relative to whether we should continue with some of the protocols we have in place or whether we should discontinue. Some of you have shared, well, if a private sector entity can insist that you can enter their place of business, whether to buy goods or to enjoy a level of entertainment or to do other things, whether it's for your health in relation to exercise or otherwise, they can prescribe their rules of entry. It is our policy that not only do you need to pay to get in, but you need to wear shoes or a shirt, or you need to make sure that you put on protective clothing, or you need to wear a mask. Some would say, well, that should be normal. Others will share, well, do we need to, when we have discussions relative to human rights, not only allow an individual or an entity to be able to challenge a government's decision, what they talk about horizontal and vertical rights, but should it also extend from the individual to the private sector entity, and even maybe, from individual to individual. So an individual who has a keen interest in public policy and law to some extent would share that if your neighbor is doing something that you find to be offensive, in the absence of even a legislation prohibiting that thing, he said his view is that could constitute a private nuisance, and in civil law you could bring some sort of complaint. Now there are the public nuisances that may be prescribed under legislation. Likewise, he says in that case, should there not also be some legislation, if necessary, to ensure that when, and he used the case of contract law and employment in particular, an employer says, well, we offer you this job, but here are the terms and conditions of your employment. Now, are those normal and accepted, even if you may feel that they are at times burdensome and may preclude the employee from taking up the employment because the conditions of employment, not just the working hours or the days that they're required to work, or the fact that they may have to do this or refrain from doing that. As we go into the break, the example given was, well, you can take your vacation, your 2 weeks, your 4 weeks, your 6 weeks, but you cannot take it during this particular month or these months. Some would say, well, that's normal. The question is, should it be? Let's pause and take a break. When we come back, invite you to share any thought you may want to encourage the public's input. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Busy, busy, busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
Freedom, Cayman Brack. Freedom, Little Cayman. Soft breezes, blue waters, no traffic. Unwind and rejuvenate your mind, body, and soul. Sister Island Staycations, a taste of freedom. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
King Sports Center takes pride in being more than just an ordinary gymnasium. For 14 years, their multi-purpose facility has been providing the community with a variety of sporting, recreational, and relaxation activities. King Sports Center has a bowling alley, lounge bar, multi-purpose rooms, powerhouse gym, rock climbing wall, bungee jumping, a 10,000 square foot rink, and so much more. For more information on the variety of services, call their friendly staff today at 946-5464 or email kings at candw.ky or visit www.kingsportscenter.com. King Sports Center, your one-stop shop for fitness, recreation, and relaxation.
Groundwater is invisible, but its impact is visible everywhere. Groundwater is a significant part of available fresh water in the world. What we do on the surface matters underground. On March 22nd, join the Water Authority in commemorating World Water Day by playing your part in protecting groundwater. Here are some simple but important steps you can take every day. Put your household waste in the garbage for collection by the Department of Environmental Health. Do not dump vehicle fluids or industrial waste, but dispose of them properly. Limit your use of pesticides and fertilizers, or don't use these products at all. Do not use storm drains to dispose of waste. Maintain your wastewater treatment system. Let's make our groundwater go from being invisible to visible this World Water Day.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. It is Open Line as we invite you to be part of our continued discussion for the remaining minutes of today's production. As you do so, please be mindful to join Mr. Art in the morning for the record. It's where we have that continuing dialogue. We have that the idea that it's about inviting public participation, and the idea, as I look at this message from one of our listeners, we see things oftentimes, but we don't see it. We look at how, for many people, will draw alongside someone because they provide a sense of safety, they provide a sense of entertainment, and they give you that notion that you can be, for all intents and purposes, surrounded by people that nurture you, that encourage you. And a message came through asking, well, what happens when you're continually around people that understandably or justifiably, at least in your mind, feeling the pinch and the wear and tear of life and are becoming a bit negative? And they say, well, it's the reality that their reduced hours of employment, so reduced income, their expenses are increasing, whether it's the housing costs, their food costs, their healthcare costs, all of these things. And asking the question, would the public weigh in, and how do a person, in light of the realities, remain positive? Now, as I looked again during the break and just then at the message, in the absence of being trained in a field to dispel advice and offer counsel, and in the perhaps consciousness that many of us sometimes are seeking and searching and are feeling the weight of the world on our shoulders. Maybe we are positive, but we're fearful of becoming despondent, in that sense of despair setting in. Maybe we haven't necessarily been in our minds, depressed, not the clinical depression as the professionals would diagnose, but that word that we have so often used that unfortunately we don't realize the significance and the import of the word. So as I reread that individual's question, how do we remain positive where the media is constantly bombarding us with negativity? The potential for this unfolding scenario in Europe to extend beyond the European borders and create a global negative consequence, perhaps like a world war, as some pundits have been apt to perhaps irresponsibly repeat. But maybe it's not that. Maybe it's the increasing prices. We've perhaps seen much of the jokes to be had about the cost of fuel. 50 gallons of fuel being hidden among some of the contraband from some other place, and that becomes the butt of the joke, as it's more of a commodity now that is valued than some other illegal activity. Or the notion that, as one shared with me earlier, first there was the coronavirus, now it's the car owner virus. That which thing you experience, the shivering, the shakes, and the fever and the sweats when you're at the filling station putting gas into your vehicle. Well, we made a joke of it as a way to cope with it, as a way to communicate the potential negative impact on our bottom line. But the reality is, this person asked the question, is there so much negativity that you find it challenged to remain positive? Well, are you in that boat? Are you willing to offer up any sort of words of counsel and encouragement, inspiration for this individual who asked that question? Now, for some of us, we take solace in the fact that we have our health. As ill-feeling as it may be at times, we give thanks to that. Do we have a family and our friends? That we live relatively in a safe place? That we can sometimes go into our kitchens or our workshops or our gardens, that we can walk the dikes, the beaches, and the like. Now, there are many who are increasingly, find it harder and harder to get or to make time to do those things because of the increased demands on our time, because of family commitments, social obligations, the volunteering that we do, and our work. And that balance between a healthy work life is becoming increasingly difficult. The second sort of question and comment that came through, even though not directly, I think, intended to be part of the first, is the idea that with all of the time that we have in a day, and all of the days that we have in a week, and those weeks run into months and into years, we are probably not taking time to enjoy ourselves. I look at that comment, and there was a comment from that same individual several months back, where it was that during 2020, when we were all, and I use this word, it may offend some of you, and well, as it should, if it means that you think heavily about what I did as I read this person's comment. We take our freedoms for granted. He said, he was under house arrest, not because of something he did illegally, not because of something he contracted, but because he was sharing a space with someone who, had returned to the island, and at one point who, received sort of instructions, well, given that particular test, this is the protocol as per the regulations. And yet, prior to that, of the two individuals, he was the least to take the opportunities to go out and enjoy the sun, the surf, the sand, and the sea. But yet, having it taken away has given him a renewed appreciation for the freedoms that he had taken for granted. So much so, he said that in this epistle of a few months back, that it has given him a renewed appreciation for those freedoms, to feel the sun, to go in the sea. And for a period of time, he thought, wow, the salt in this thing is much higher concentrated than he remembers. Well, let's take this call. Good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, Sterling. Dwayne, how you doing today, man?
Very well, man. It's always a pleasure to hear from you as well. Huh? Prayer that all is well with you.
Oh, yeah, so far. You're only good till the doctor see you, and then they'll say something wrong with you, then you gotta go back to them, and that kind of thing.
Well.
But other than that, I'm blessed.
Amen. Yes, we are indeed, man.
Wonderful.
It's for us to not only recognize and enjoy the blessings, but to encourage others and perhaps to help them to see it.
Well, the only advice that I got is always think positive.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you fill your head with negative minds and thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
you're in more trouble than you started out with.
Okay. Someone else messaged, and I don't think this is inappropriate to share. I mentioned the media, and the message come through saying that they deliberately limited how much news they were watching. Not to stick their head in the sand and pretend there wasn't any happening, but you were always getting this constant negative energy and imagery.
Vibes and stuff, yeah.
Right. And said that they did it and started to feel better. Now, is that a case of...
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, that will happen.
Okay.
As I said, you fill your mind with positive things, and we call it.
Mhm.
Now, I listen to the news on Radio Cayman, of course.
Mhm.
But,
Of course.
To say watching TV and stuff, I don't watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Because 90% of the time when you watch it, things tend to stick in your mind when you see something physically.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are watching the news on TV and you're seeing murders and this and that and next going on, of course you can feel bad, and you always feel bad because you're watching it.
Right. Can I share with you and others, Ernest Eubanks, the very, very talented personal trainer, and if he doesn't mind, I just threw his own example.
very good.
Right? He would tell you for a man who's 120, he looks good, right? He looks like a teenager, right? But he takes care of himself. So he said this to us. He says, your diet is not only what you eat, it is what you watch, what you listen to, what you read, the people you hang with, the things you sort of subject your mind and soul to. Says always be mindful of the things you put into your body, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. All right. What's our song?
I had a teacher in primary school, Miss Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
And I never, ever forgot what she said. She said, show me your company, and I'll tell you who you are. And that's not just being around people.
Mm-hmm.
That is what you put into your mind.
Mm-hmm.
What you read, like what you just said, you watch, and, whatever you do, make sure it's positive.
Yeah.
Make sure it's a good report.
Yeah. What was that song we all would probably sing as children? Was it Be Careful Little Eyes, What You See, Little Hands, What You Do, and Ears,
And
What You
little
Hear.
ears, what you hear.
Something like that, right?
Little lips, what you say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think that too often we don't appreciate the importance of the words, the actions, what we do and don't do, and when, and the like. I don't have the study to hand. I could probably find it, and people can, look at somewhere. But I'm reminded that just the playing of certain types of music.
I was going to say that too.
Affected the growth of plants.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So if that's the case,
I've seen that report some years ago.
Mm-hmm.
On the study, with let's say rock music versus a oh goodness, what is it called again? Like Beethoven and them, the
classical and stuff.
And classical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the classical music made that plant grow so much better
mm-hmm.
than the rock music.
Yeah, man, it's interesting that I don't think, as parents in particular, one parent, I don't think that I would be disclosing anything confidential. You're so excited to be with your children for as much as you can, and to and fro the activities with the school. You're in the car and you're laughing and you're humming along to the song on the radio, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
And only one day, alone in the car, and the song comes on, and you turn it up, and then you start to realize, wait a minute, that song, this is what that song is saying, this is what that song is about. Nice catchy beat. And your little 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old, whatever it is, know the lyrics, may not know the content.
Yeah.
But do you understand what potential impact would be? And I want to share that to ask, are we doing that for our children? And are we also doing it for ourselves?
Yeah, well, I have seen kids
mm-hmm.
that actually, you say, hide away and listen to these rap music and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And you become what you listen to
and
what you dwell on.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen it. I've seen it. I mean,
so let me then ask of you, with that in mind, right? Like, I endeavor to be positive. I think, thank God, it's easier because I have as the example, positive, nurturing parents and family and friends and the like. And I genuinely always pray that I embrace life and not just be grateful, but to be gracious as well. But there are some of us who would see that positiveness, that approach to, building unity as opposed to division, as weakness, as idealistic, as this thing that is unattainable. Is that so? I mean, for my benefit, is that you lost touch with reality? Or is it that if you want it to be, you need to speak it into being?
No, you need to speak and intervene.
Okay.
But I have had the privilege of, I mean, I love both of my parents well, and no comparison in my book. But you would say I had both sides of the fence because my father loved his liquor. I mean, he loved it. When I tell you loved it, I don't know who else would love it as much as him. My mom never drank alcohol in her life. A lot of times when we were growing up, my father was out at sea. So we had, you would say, little interaction with him until he came home. So in that time, my mother, that you would say, did everything. She was the teacher, she was the preacher, she was the cook, she was, the accountant, everything. Right. And we learned that. And knock on wood, I can say, neither one of my mother's 4 children touch a drop of alcohol to this day. Neither a cigarette. Yes, my father didn't smoke, at least when we were born. And so he was smoking before, but he gave it up. But he wouldn't give up the alcohol. So we had both sides of the fence to look at. Which did we choose?
Yeah.
So, it shows you that what you really learn, and then when you get bigger, you have choices.
But this is it. And this is where we're realistic in our approach and our discussions with our children. We also give them a chance, from what you're sharing, to appreciate that, there are two sides to the coin. Right? I'm hoping that as a society, we're not apt to constantly condemn, but then we're also appreciative of what Mr. Curtis talked about, what obtains.
Yeah, no, we don't condemn, but we need to be, instead of condemnation, we need to be correction. Because if you leave the child alone and say, "Oh, don't do that again," you hear? No, you got to be stern with the child. You know how to spank him for everything. And there are people that don't believe in spanking. Well, I mean, but be stern. So if you take a tree and bend it to say, well, I want to make a U out of it or an S out of it or whatever, you do it when it's small. Because when that tree get a certain size, you can't bend it.
Yeah. Well, in saying that, I'm quickly harking back to one of the comments. I think Ms. Mammoth, as our guest, shared it. Whether it's science and math and any approach to education, as you shared, introduce it early, explain it, and involve. But it probes too, though. It leads us to think, whether it's deliberate or unconscious. Is there an unfolding dynamic in our society that may be leading to some outcomes that not are as inclusive as we should, and not as fair and impartial as we would believe that is being shared publicly? Now, if it's deliberate or unconscious, the outcome is still the same. And so if that is the thing, have we acknowledged it, and are we doing anything? Think of the young child. Why should that young child be denied an opportunity to be introduced to, whether it's music or something in the arts, or it's a sporting activity or an academic-based activity, all because of us as the adult, inherent biases or prejudices or preference.
Yeah, but really and truly, are we the adults these days, or the children are the adults? Because I remember like 20 years ago, not even 20, let's see, about, I would say 15, 20, about 15, 20 years ago. My eldest son was prefect at high school, so they had to wear a different type of uniform. And I went to, and I'll call the name because they were good, Super Stitch, to have his uniform made. And then there was another parent in there having theirs done as well. And they told the seamstress, hey, look, you need to do it this way or my child won't wear it. I turned to her, I said, who is the parent and who is the child? I said, let me tell you something. If my child came and told me that, it's either he put it on and go to school or he go to school without it. Take your choice. And I had a friend that his son wanted to keep his pants pulled down. He never said a word to him. Got to school, he would get another guy and say, hey, young man, take your pants off. Why? He said, because it looks like you want it off. No, this is style. He said, not in my house. He says, either you pull it up or you take it off. You're not having it both ways.
You can't be in or out, right? Pick one.
Yeah. So, he was stern on him. Today, this young man is dressing properly.
Well, as you share that, I hope that parents recall Miss Namata's comments. She went into her first day of work, not just the first female engineer, but the first female, and she's dressed a certain way because that's how she would have dressed. And only to realize that created a perception, oh, you must be an intern, not a new employee. And so there is that, but there are many who unfortunately subscribe to the notion fake it until you make it. There's a attempt to style but no substance. So we got to get to that space where we appreciate the concerted effort and we reward excellence and stop celebrating mediocrity.
Anyway, Sir and Dwayne,
thank you, sir.
It's good chatting with you, but the time I can see is gone for you. And
just beginning, man.
I don't want them to tell you that you're
Well, I'm at work, right? No, but you are right, and I am grateful that some of our team here are so respectful and appreciative of our callers that we will make whatever concessions and adjustments to ensure the conversation continues. But you are right, we're into another segment. You don't need to respond now, but I will share with you that increasingly it's almost like an ongoing, was it a soap opera, a saga? Your plight and commentary relative to inspection. We've received, up until today, 2 more inquiries from unknown people wondering, has that been resolved relative to your came-back inspection? So
no, it has. Well, yes. Last Friday did.
Okay.
So it's been now almost 4 weeks.
All right. Well, persistence and perseverance.
It get resolved, yes.
All right. Well, that's great. You don't need to speak anymore to it. The next call, if you wish, you can. But people were very sort of intrigued to know whether you finally got that resolved. But we'll talk about it some more, all right?
Sure.
All right, blessings to you. May the week be
You
continually safe and productive.
Okay.
You're welcome. Well, to our listeners, thank you very, very much. Our endeavor always at Radio Cayman is to inform you in a timely, accurate, impartial, objective, professional way. From the personal perspective, anything to be present here and talk today, if I can make it better, please let us know. Certainly, always appreciate your continued prayers and input, your guidance. And, wasn't that long ago I was reminded that I celebrated 14 years. I didn't think it. What Ms. Namata said earlier resonates with me. If you find something that you love and that you see it as you want to go to work, not that you have to go to work, you may enjoy it. I'm very grateful publicly for the wonderful team we have here at Radio Cayman, from the director to the deputy to all of the team members. It truly is an honor to be a part of the public service, and as we endeavor to serve the interests of our country and provide that, invaluable contribution to our society. Know that we have competent, committed, very dedicated members of the team across the entire civil service. So let's draw closer to one another. Let's make sure that what is it that our parents probably told us, that their parents told them. Never forget who you're for. Right? And with that, let's always carry the mantle exceptionally, high. Keep that bar as high as possible. If you live and work in this country, irrespective of your origin or your tenure, whether you've been here for a day or a decade, or you've lost count how many centuries has passed, let's make sure that we make this place the best. It's the safest, most socially stable, most deliberately, in its endeavors to ensure a sense of inclusion and acceptance. Let not that thing which offends go unaccounted, because some people may believe that we can act with impunity. We may act in ignorance, not aware that it offends the social consciousness. Sometimes, as the caller shared, it's a little bit about correction, not anything other than to make it better. And to all live and work here, your contribution makes it better if it's done in a love and a positive way. So until tomorrow, my friends, be blessed.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.